Hey everybody, how you doing? My name is Matt Reister. I'm the head boys high school basketball coach at Waterloo Christian School. And this video is going to be my attempt to communicate better with our players and parents as we approach this next season. In the past, we've had a parent meeting that not every parent can attend, and we just try to give them the Cliff Notes of it. Or sometimes we'll have a practice or an open gym, and we'll have some things to say to the players. Maybe we'll have a gathering at our house, and not all the players can make it, and so some people miss out on some of the key points. And so here, we're going to do a series of videos and splice them together so that people can kind of be on the same page to a greater degree than we have in the past. And you can rewatch this, you can share this, you can, kind of navigate it so you hit on one topic. If you understand all the other ones, you want to listen up on some other thing that you haven't heard about yet. Hopefully we'll put chapters or sections in this video so you can navigate to those easily. This is not going to be scripted. This is not going to be super produced. It's just going to be me whenever I get the bug to put something down on video that I think will be beneficial for the group, something that parents and players ought to know. I'll grab the camera here, hit record, and we'll just stick it in the queue with everything else. So thanks for watching, and it's going to be a great season, our last season at Walnut Ridge Church on that campus. Next year we get to move to the old Cedar Falls High School. We're excited about that, but for now it's going to be a great year, and thanks for supporting Waterloo Christian School Regent boys basketball. I think one of the first things I should address at the beginning of this series of videos is, why am I a coach and how do I view my role? Might help you understand where I'm coming from a little bit. So why am I a coach? Well, there's a very kind of dry logistical answer to that question, which is when Mason was in 7th grade, we started coming around Waterloo Christian School. He started playing junior high basketball. Then he got up in high school. It was evident to me that they were a little bit short-handed. And so there was a coach, an assistant coach when I went to Cedar Falls High School named John Martin. He's one of the guys that owns Martin Brothers. And John played basketball at UNI. And he made himself available to Coach Jerry Slikus, our head coach at Cedar Falls, made himself available to come work with the post players. And so John would come to our practice, every day at about 4 o'clock for 30 or 45 minutes, work with post players, leave. He didn't get paid. It was a volunteer position. He would sit on the bench with us and just kind of bring some of his perspective as a former basketball player himself. Now, I was no John Martin. I am no John Martin. He's forgotten more than I'll ever know about post play or the game of basketball. But his example kind of inspired me to think, maybe I could make myself available on a volunteer basis to help these guys out. My first year as an assistant coach was when Lucas Segerstrom and Tim Doring were co-head coaches. And I was happy to work under them and just kind of serve them in whatever way they saw fit. Learned a lot from them along the way, and hopefully was able to, help the program and teach the kids some things, not just about basketball, but about life and serving the Lord and all that. The very next season, about 2 weeks before the season, Tim Doring, who was slotted to be the head coach because Lucas couldn't be co-head coach with him any longer. He'd just taken a new job and was going to be too busy with his job to give that kind of time commitment. And so Lucas and I were going to be assistants under Tim. A couple weeks before the season started, Tim himself got a new job, found himself in a life situation where he couldn't coach the team anymore. And so we're kind of looking at each other and talking to Mr. Hall, who's going to do this? And I drew the short straw or the long straw, however you want to look at it, rushed to get my coaching certificate done, and was the head coach for the first season that year. That was, I believe, this will be my 5th season as head coach going into this season. And so that's kind of the logistical reason I'm a head coach. That's not really why I'm a head coach. I'm a head coach because I think that this platform, this position, is a great position from which to develop men into the kind of men they're going to need to be to stand for truth and serve the Lord all their days. We're fortunate to live to work in a Christian school setting, so we don't have to be, deceptive or hide that one bit. We can just wear that on our sleeve. So if a guy plays basketball for us for 4 years in high school and he's with us for 3 months a year, almost every day, there's just a lot of contact hours. And I'm excited to lead by example. I'm excited to get to know these guys in such a way that they can see how, despite my imperfections, despite my flaws, they can see how I'm committed to serving the Lord. It kind of reminds me of where Paul says, follow me as I follow Christ. I want these guys to look to me, and I want them to follow me because I'm following Christ. And I also want to help develop toughness in them. I want them to have thick skin. I want them to have a spine, because the world is going to hate them if they truly stand for truth. The world hates Jesus. It hates the Bible. It hates God. And if these guys are going to be the kind of men that God's going to use to have great kingdom impact, they're going to have to be tough. They're going to have gotten over failure. They're going to have gotten over being publicly humiliated. They're going to have gotten over things not going their way. They're going to have learned how to deal with adversity. And these are all things that we can learn in the game of basketball in a pretty safe environment. These boys can take steps forward in these areas in a way that'll hopefully set them up to thrive in those areas even further as they get older and become dads and husbands and community leaders and church leaders and these kind of things. So that's really what fires me up about coaching. How do I view my role as coach? Well, I would say that when I first started, I was a little bit insecure because I'm not the best X's and O's guy. I'm not the best in-game strategy guy. I don't know basketball as well as a lot of people, even people on our coaching staff. And so that was kind of a point of insecurity. I wasn't proud of that. I was kind of maybe even trying to hide that or cover that up my first year or two. But I had a conversation with somebody at a funeral reception, that somebody who knows basketball really well, who's been around it at higher levels than high school, and who knows coaching a lot better than I do. And I was describing that to them. They said, well, you don't need to be the basketball expert to be the head coach. You don't want to be the best X's and O's guy on your coaching staff. You want to get other people who are better than you. You don't want to be the best in-game strategy guy. You want to get people who are better than you at that. You don't want to be the best developmental guy. You got to get people who are better than you at that. What you need to be, what this person was saying to me, what you need to be is you got to be the guy that sets the tone for the culture. You got to be the guy who takes the hits when the guys want to go this way, but we've determined that we're going to go this way. You need to be the guy who doesn't get blown and tossed by the opinions of the day, because you're convinced that the direction your program is going is the right direction. It's built on these principles, and you're going to stick to those principles even when they're not popular. You need to be the guy that kind of generally, kind of holds it all together and kind of plays a leadership role where you kind of keep the main thing, but you delegate some of the other things to others. And when he started talking that language, I thought, man, that's kind of how I'm wired. I've got my hands in a lot of different things, ministries, business, and that's just kind of been my philosophy. I'm not an expert in any of these things, but I can lead them in a way that has conviction, in a way that is not going to be, this way today and that way tomorrow, depending on, the squeaky wheel getting the grease or whatever it is. And so my role is to empower our other coaches and to set the tone and the direction for our program, to make sure that we're keeping kingdom things a priority, even above and beyond basketball. And some of these videos that you watch here hopefully will spell that out for you in greater detail and give you a little bit more of an idea into what I'm thinking, what our program is going to be all about. And thank you for watching. And I invite any feedback, questions, follow-up, pushback that you might have along the way. Right at the front of these videos, I want to lay out the 4 values that are going to guide our program. And they're right here on this card. I call them the 4 C's. And this is something that came to me a few months ago. It actually started out as 3 C's. You could have argued that we add a 5th C, but we decided to land on 4 C's. And they're right here: Christ, character, culture, court. And they're in that order on purpose. Let's start with the very bottom one, court. Court refers to what happens on the basketball floor. It has to do with starting rotation, in-game rotations, strategies, our defensive scheme, our offensive scheme, what kind of game we're going to play, our practices, just kind of our general philosophy about the game of basketball. And one thing I want to say about that is that just because we are a Christian school, just because we're aiming for something way higher than basketball and what happens on the court, just because that's true does not mean that we don't care about basketball. We care a lot about basketball. We're here to win basketball games. We're here to develop a winning basketball program. One of the values that kind of undergirds that is just excellence. I'm not going to say winning honors God, because there's a lot of people who lost in Scripture who God used to do great things, and he, in fact, caused them to lose so they could do great things. So it's not winning that honors God, but excellence honors God. And we want to build a program of excellence, which includes, in basketball and in sports, pursuing winning. And so we're not going to be apologetic about that. It's just because we're Christian doesn't mean, oh, it's okay as long as we all have fun and as long as we all grow in our faith, then it's a success. There is success in those things, but we're going to take the game of basketball seriously. We do care about what happens on the court. I'd say, we want to pursue success as much as some secular school that doesn't necessarily care about Christ at the top of this list wants to pursue success. But we're going to put the court, the 4th C, in its correct 4th position. Right above that is culture. Culture is the ethos of our team, the ethos of our program. I'm going to talk about a few cultural things in videos following this. But let me jump to character. Character refers to individual character. Somebody once said that character is who you are when no one is looking. And so we want to really hold up the value of personal character in this program. And not just any personal character. I think the secular schools have a program called Character Counts, and I don't want to trash on it really too much, but from a biblical theological perspective, you can't actually achieve true character, which I would define as Christ-like character, which is in alignment with the truths of Scripture. You can't achieve true character apart from a relationship with Christ. Because it's by putting our faith in Christ, by receiving him, by believing in his name, that we are indwelled by the Holy Spirit. Now this is turned into a sermon or a theological talk. We're indwelled by the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit supernaturally from the inside sanctifies us, changes us so that we become more like Christ, so that we display more of a Christ-like character. So I would argue that you can't truly have the character that we're shooting for apart from Christ. And so that's why the first C is Christ. The most important C is Christ. And we're unashamed, we're unapologetic about holding up Christ as our standard. We want to make sure that kids truly know Christ. That was a theme in our retreat. Are you assured and secure in your salvation? Because if not, that you're not living the way God wants you to live. He wants us to live assured of our faith and secure in our faith. And when we are in that position, then we are on a road of developing true Christ-like character, not because of our ability to be morally good, but because of the Spirit's ability to change us from within and make us more like Christ. That's a very gospel-centered approach that we want at the top of our program. But how that trickles down is obviously our relationship with Christ affects our personal character. It affects who we are when no one's looking. It affects how we talk about others behind their back. It affects what we're doing on our phones or what we're looking at. It affects how we're acting with our girlfriend when the parents aren't home. And so it cascades. Obviously, faith comes into character, and then our culture as a team, all that is the ethos, the culture of the team is the total sum of all these individual characters. And so if we have a lot of people following Christ who have solid, strong character being developed by the Spirit and builds a strong culture, then it's going to have a huge impact on what happens on the court, which we want to see success. But we know that success on the court, it does have to do with dribbling and passing and making shots and playing defense and rebounding for sure. We're going to get into that. But it has an awful lot to do with the culture of the team, which is built on the character of the individuals, which comes only through faith in Christ. Those are the 4 C's, and we're going to hold them up high and refer to them often. The next thing I want to talk about is our theme for this season. And here it is right here. You sure? You sure? As in, are you sure about that? And one of the things I love about this theme is you can apply it to each of the 4 C's: Christ, character, culture, court. As it relates to what happens on the court, are you sure that that's a good pass? Are you sure that that's a good shot? Are you sure that you're giving your very best effort on defense? Another way we can apply it on the court, there are a lot of teams in our conference who, because we graduated Drew Wagner last year, who's the best player in the conference, one of the best players in 1A, he got all these accolades and all these awards. I think there are a lot of people around our conference and around the area who are assuming that we're not going to be nearly as good of a basketball team as we were last year. And my question to them is, are you sure about that? Because I beg to differ. I like this year's team. I think there are some things about this year's team that are going to be better than we've ever had. And so it's a little bit of a challenge. Like, you guys sure that you think we're going to be the doormat of the conference now just because we lost a player or 2 or 3 or 4? Nah, that's not how it's going to be. You can apply you sure to our culture as a team. Are you sure, team, that you're not going into this game with your tail between your legs, a little fearful, a little insecure, because this is a team that has typically beat us, and this is a team that on paper maybe is supposed to have more talent than us? Are you sure that you're approaching this with the right mentality and that we're developing the right culture around this game? Or on the other side, are you sure that you're not taking this opponent for granted? Are you sure that just because we're supposed to beat these guys and we beat them 8 out of the last 8 times, that you're prepared and that we as a team are doing what we need to do to get ready for this game? Are you sure that our culture is healthy? Are you sure that we are a one for all for one type of team? Are you sure that we've got a good work ethic individually or as a team, as a culture? You can apply it to individual character. Are you sure that you've got your head straight about your role? Are you sure that you're not jealous or bitter toward another player or just toward the circumstance because you want to be doing something other than what we need you to do on this team? Are you sure individually that in your heart of hearts, you're playing for an audience of one? You're not trying to impress people with your stats and chase stats. You're not trying to impress people in the stands, but that you're trying to impress the Lord with the effort you put forth and with the character that you display when you compete. Are you sure that outside of the game of basketball, you're doing things in a way that's honoring to the Lord and represents yourself and represents our school well? Are you sure that you're behaving the right way with your girlfriend? Are you sure that you're honoring your mother and father the way that you should? Are you sure that you're approaching your academics in your school with character and focus and hard work? And then, of course, you can apply, are you sure, to the first C, the fourth one that we're talking about here, Christ. There are a lot of people who think they're Christians, but they've never received Christ. They've never believed in his name. They've never confessed with their mouth that Jesus is Lord. They don't believe in their heart that God raised him from the dead. They might know a thing or two about Christ, but they don't personally know Christ. And so we're going to ask the question all the time, are you sure that you know Christ? Because we're not just going to take it for granted that you're going to a Christian school, you're from a Christian family, you have Christian words or a cross on your jersey that you're a Christian. Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? And that's our theme this year. You sure? You're going to see it written. You're going to hear it talked about. And hopefully it will compel us to address some of these important issues and help us improve what we put out on the basketball floor for each game. So there you go. Theme. You sure? Because I know what truly matters, it enables me to enjoy what seems to matter, like this. That's a quote from a guy named Tony Bennett. Tony Bennett was the coach of Virginia basketball, and several years ago they won the national championship. But before that, the year before that, they were a number one seed, and they were the very first number one seed in the NCAA tournament who was ever knocked off in the first round by a 16 seed. Very, very embarrassing, very discouraging, frustrating. They obviously, as a number one seed, had hopes of going at least to the Final Four, if not win it at all. Get knocked out and embarrassed. You're the college basketball storyline for the entire offseason. And it's embarrassing. They came back the next year and won it all. And in the post-game press conference, Tony Bennett, who's a Christian, and not just a professing Christian, but seems to have a lifestyle that backs it up and would give you reasons to think he's a true believer. He was asked by the media if this, from kind of a euphoria standpoint, was the high point of his career. And before he answered that question with the quote that I just said, he talked about being in the press conference room with his dad, Dick Bennett. Dick Bennett was a coach at Wisconsin, and several years before that, Dick Bennett led Wisconsin to the Final Four. And they asked Dick a similar question: where does this rank in terms of significance in his career or in his life, in terms of just kind of fulfillment and excitement, whatever it was? And Tony Bennett says that I was in that press conference room and I saw my dad answer the question this way, and I've been waiting to say the same quote. I've been waiting for an opportunity to share the same quote. And that's when he said, because I know what truly matters, it enables me to enjoy what seems to matter, like this. Now this gets to the culture. This gets to a culture aspect, or even a character aspect, that we're trying to promote in this basketball program. And that is that, let's be honest, in the grand scheme of things, basketball doesn't matter. Basketball doesn't matter. And honestly, some of the players and some of the parents, not just in our program, but around basketball, particularly parents who call themselves Christians, I don't expect people who aren't Christians to not idolize things like basketball. I'm always a little bit stunned when it seems like people who are Christians seem to idolize basketball. Of course, I can't judge people's hearts. I don't know exactly what they think, but sometimes it looks like people who call themselves Christians idolize sports or basketball. We don't want to do that. Basketball, in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of eternity, in the grand scheme of the kingdom of God, in the grand scheme of promoting the gospel and the truth of God's word, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter any further than just using it as a tool to do those things. So we want to properly view basketball. And we want to say, because I know what truly matters, which is Jesus Christ, which is truth, which is God, because I know what truly matters, it enables me to enjoy what seems to matter. Basketball doesn't truly matter, but it seems to matter. And when you have that approach, it allows you to view a lot of things, whether it's, in my life, basketball or Hawkeye football, or going to Yankees games, or making money through a fireworks store, whatever it is. These things seem to matter. And we can enjoy them properly. We can use them properly as gifts from God. We can steward them properly only if we know what truly matters. And so we say this to the guys all the time: because I know what truly matters, it enables me to enjoy what seems to matter, like this. Here's the flip side of that too. We've quoted that quote many times at the end of a disappointing game. Because I know what truly matters, it also enables me not to be so discouraged about what seems to matter, like this tough loss, or what seems to matter, like this critical mistake that I made, or whatever. So there's the Tony Bennett quote. It's on the locker room wall in our locker room. I imagine when we move over to the new Cedar Falls High School, we're going to put it on our wall over there too. That is a key mantra, not just for basketball, but for life, because I know what truly matters. It enables me to enjoy what seems to matter, like this. And of course, that assumes and presumes that you know what truly matters, that you are in a relationship with Jesus Christ. Your sins are forgiven. You're guaranteed a place in heaven. And that cuts to your own personal character, your own personal walk with Christ, and it affects our team culture. So for this one, I might need to give a trigger warning. You might not like what I have to say for this one, but I'm convinced that it's biblical, and I'm convinced that it is totally necessary. And so here's a couple things we're going to be, and one thing we're not going to be. So we're going to be unconditionally supportive. We're going to support every one of our kids, no matter what. And we're going to be unconditionally loving. We're going to love every one of the kids in our program. We truly do, and we truly are. We truly have their best interest in mind, namely their long-term kingdom interests, more than just their short-term high school basketball interests. So we're going to be unconditionally supportive and unconditionally loving, but we will not be unconditionally affirming. And I think that one of the greatest lies that has been foisted on our culture in the last couple, 3, maybe even longer decades is that if you don't affirm me, then you don't love me. And that could not be further from the truth. Most importantly, it's contrary to the nature of God to suggest that in order for God to truly love us, he has to always affirm us. It's just not biblical in any way, shape, or form. And we're not going to adopt that idea in our basketball program. I think that some people and some kids have fallen into this trap that in order for Johnny to feel loved, we have to always tell Johnny that he's doing a great job no matter what. And I think that actually sets Johnny up to be less effective for the kingdom. And I'm going to try to describe a little bit about what I mean here. But I want to tie into this another thing, and I want to tell a story that helps illustrate another kind of core philosophy that I have, why I love athletics, why I love sports, even at the high school level, is there are fewer and fewer places in today's kind of insulated, padded, softened culture where kids can learn how to fail well, can learn how to overcome adversity, can learn how to face public humiliation and get up and move on. And this is one of my favorite stories about my son, Mason. He was in junior high. That's when we first got started with basketball at Waterloo Christian School. And their junior high team, I think Mason was in 7th grade, maybe 8th grade. And they were going to play Holmes Junior High, the big public school in Cedar Falls. And so we went over to Holmes with our ragtag little group of kids. And I think we probably played their 7th grade team. Whatever grade it was, they were kids who were Mason's age. Because our 7th and 8th grade team couldn't hold a candle to their 7th grade team, much less their 8th grade team. So I'm pretty sure it was 7th grade. We go over there. Holmes, I bet they have 40 or 50 kids that age out for basketball. Their bench was like 3 rows of bleachers strong. And they would literally, because there wasn't enough time to get everyone into play, they would literally every 3 or 4 minutes just substitute a whole new 5 guys in. Well, we had about the same 5 or 7 or 8 guys, small little team, and we're just getting run. Well, because we live in Cedar Falls, I went to Cedar Falls, we're involved in different things in Cedar Falls, church, different groups, different kind of friend groups or whatever. Mason knew several of these kids that he was playing against. And it was kind of like, oh gosh, we're going into this thing and we're going to get torched. And it's a little bit embarrassing, even just walking in there with our, not cool jerseys, kids who haven't really grown up playing basketball, not wearing the cool shoes, whatever it is. And so you're already going into that situation just kind of on edge. And I remember at one point in the game, Mason is playing defense on a kid. Of course, the Holmes gym is full not only of the kids, but their parents, and then a bunch of the girls, the cheerleaders, and kind of kids from around the school. Mason's defending a kid at the top of the key, and the kid puts a move on him, and Mason got his ankles broke. He got juked out, and he fell down. And I still don't understand it. Back in the day when we were playing, that wasn't all that cool, but these days people go nuts about that. And so the entire gym, the student section, everyone's like, oh, he got his ankles broken. The place is just going nuts. And there's my son, 7th grade Mason, which you got to see a picture of this kid. I mean, the guy was tiny. Can't believe he's 6'3" or 6'4" now. We thought he might not ever get to 5'10". I mean, just skinny, short. His jersey and shorts are too big for him. He barely knows what he's doing out there, and the gym is just going nuts because he got his ankles broke. And for the first, I remember this like it was yesterday. For the first 2 or 3 seconds after that happens, you just want to run out there and scoop the kid up in your arms and say, hey, it's okay, don't worry about it. You just feel for him. I mean, he's being publicly humiliated in front of his own peers, and he's just got to take it. And after that first 2 or 3 seconds wore off, I was so thankful that happened. And that sounds kind of sick to say, but you need to understand why I was thankful, because what came immediately to my mind was, if Mason is going to be a believer, if he's going to live for Christ all of his days, if he is going to believe the truth of God's word, in this culture that is increasingly hostile to those things, he's going to be mocked, and he's going to be jeered, and he's going to be humiliated for the rest of his life. He's going to be ostracized and excluded and talked bad about behind his back. And you know what? If being embarrassed as a 7th grade kid on a basketball floor in front of his friends, in front of a big crowd of people who are going nuts because he just looked like a fool out there, if that helps him develop the thick skin and the spine that is going to be needed for him to stand for Christ all of his days through this mess of a culture that's getting worse every day, then thank God for that. Thank God for that. I really, really believe that. And that's just kind of how we've raised our kids. And it plays into what we're talking about here, that we don't want to just automatically buy into the lie that to unconditionally love or unconditionally support a kid, we have to unconditionally affirm a kid. And so those of you who've been around the program, you know exactly what this looks like. We're not just going to tell every kid all the time that everything they do is incredible. In fact, we're going to point out the things that they're not doing right. And we're going to do our best to do it in a way that not only is loving from our own hearts, but is it received as loving from the kid. And I can just admit that all of us coaches, parents, we're all on kind of a growth trajectory when it comes to that. There are a lot of times when we mean well with what we say, we have good intentions in mind, but maybe it comes across in a way that cuts a little deeper than we intended or whatever. But I just don't want to apologize, and I don't want to have to defend the idea that this is high school basketball. This isn't 3rd grade or 4th grade basketball where kids are just learning the game. 5th grade basketball where they're just developing, and where we might be a little bit more gracious with our evaluation of how they're playing. This is high school basketball. You've heard the other things I've had to say so far. We're out there to win. We're doing it ultimately to serve Christ and to build a kingdom kind of mindset. But we are going to we're going to love and we're going to support, but we're not going to unconditionally affirm. And it's going to be really good for the kid. It's going to prepare them to thrive as adult men. We're trying to develop men here in a world as they stand for Christ and for truth, a world that hates them more and more and more. And so I hope you can get on board with that. And that's it. I want to talk about a couple cultural aspects that we want to build into our team, things that, frankly, in the recent past, I was pretty convinced we were going to have no problem doing really well. but things that, based on information that I'm getting from different sources, I'm a little more concerned now as we get closer to the season about them going well and need to be addressed and highlighted. And we'll address these things with the individuals that they need to be addressed with, and we'll continue to talk about these and keep them on the front burner until we feel comfortable with where we're at. And those two things are oneness, I'm calling it oneness, and the second thing is buy-in. Oneness and buy-in. Let's take them one at a time. We need a culture of oneness, meaning we need the team to be one. I think there's the possibility still for us to be a team with the most chemistry, best chemistry than we've had as a team in the 4 years previous that I've been head coach. I think there are a lot of great chemistry type folks on the team. But I'm also getting some feedback that might not be as true as I thought. And we need every single guy on this team caring deeply and genuinely about the success and the best interest of every other guy on the team. From whoever the top 5 guys are that are going to get a lot of varsity playing time, to the bottom 5 guys who might struggle to get JV playing time. These guys need to be all about supporting and encouraging these guys and everybody in between. Now, I understand when you get a group of 20 guys together, you don't always click the same way with 1 or 2 of these guys as you do with these other guys. There's a natural affinity that happens. That's just life. And so I'm not saying that we can rewrite that, but even in the cases where there's not a natural click or a natural affinity, everybody on the team needs to be convinced in their heart of hearts that everybody else on the team is for them, not against them, not mocking them, not saying things about them behind their back, not being jealous of them because they think it's not fair that they get a starting position or they get a higher position in the rotation than they do, not bitter or holding a grudge because of some dumb thing outside of basketball. Who knows what that could be. But we need every guy being for every guy. No one's belittling anyone. No one is talking down about anyone. Obviously, in the gym, during practice and during games, and in the locker room and on the bus. But even more importantly, or as importantly, outside the gym. There's not this, when I get with my group of guys that I click with, we're going to go over here and we're going to talk about these guys over here in a derogatory way. We're going to confront that harshly. We're not going to put up with it. And I'm trying to measure my words here, but that will be addressed with. And let me just say that for the sake of building a program that is strong in those areas long term, we're willing to lose games short term so that those lessons can be taught and received. And in some cases, those lessons might not be received in any other way better than people being benched. So, and by the way, the 5 of us coaches are of like mind on this. And we've got the support of a lot of people who have a lot of say in our role in this program. Let's just keep it at that. The second one, so oneness is going to be important. Number 2 is buy-in. We need every guy from top to bottom bought into what we're doing, bought into why we play the way we play, bought into why we practice the way we practice, bought into the pecking order that we decide, the rotations that we decide, bought into our game plans, bought into the philosophies behind why we're doing what we're doing, bought into the idea that, just like I got done saying, we'd be willing to lose games in the short term by benching people who need to be taught a lesson so that we can, in the long term, make sure that the values that we're shooting for are intact. We need everyone bought into that. We need everyone bought into our coaches, respecting our coaches. The 5 of us together have plenty of experience and knowledge to lead a program at this level successfully. Are we perfect? No. Are we going to make mistakes? Of course. Could you armchair quarterback us as much as you want? Yes. But from the player's standpoint, we can't tolerate any of that. You got to be completely bought in. You need to respect every one of your coaches. Sometimes I hear that when I'm around, because I'm perceived to be the guy who's a little more heavy-handed, a little bit more of a hard nose, like I'm going to make people toe the line. If I'm not around, people slack off a little bit. That's not acceptable. You need to give your best. You need to have a good attitude. You need to be respectful of every coach, no matter who they are, no matter what they're doing, because they're the authority that God has appointed for this time. It's as simple as that. By the way, the reason we need your respect and the reason we need your buy-in isn't because there's some unfilled hole in our lives that will be filled up if a 10th grade boy respects us, or if an 18-year-old boy buys into the basketball program that we've put together. That's not the reason that we need your respect or your buy-in. The team, the program needs your respect or your buy-in, because anything less than that will directly or indirectly sabotage what we're trying to do. It will be a cancer in our culture, and it will affect adversely in significant ways what happens on the court. If we want to succeed on the court to the level that I think we can, it's going to require a great culture, and a great culture has no room for less than full buy-in. A great culture has no room for less than total oneness within the team. You listen to some of these college coaches talk, it's incredible how much they talk about when they're recruiting kids. And I'm not suggesting that we got a lot of kids that are getting recruited by these big time, Calipari, Gino Auriemma type guys, but we could learn something from what they say. They say, I watch the kids to see what kind of teammate they are. I watch how the kids interact with their coaches. I watch how the kids interact with their parents. I watch how they encourage the guys that are playing when they're on the bench. These kind of things. Of course, how kids play basketball matters, but when you get to that level, everybody can play basketball. And when you get to our level, in our situation, we've got enough guys that can play at a certain level that we can field a team and be, just by showing up, a middle of the road team in our conference. If we want to be excellent, if we want to be great, we got to be bought in and we got to be functioning as one, and not just on the surface, not just good job, way to go, encouraging each other outwardly, but it needs to be in our hearts that we genuinely are for each other. And then that needs to flow out in the way that we interact with each other, the way we speak to each other, the way we speak about each other when each other aren't around, the way that we talk about our coaches, the way we talk about what's going on in the program. And each one of you boys has the power to contribute in a positive way to that culture or a negative way. And when we identify that negative contributions are being made, we're going to deal with them. And we're going to deal with them until it's fixed, whatever it takes. I would just say this to the parents. Will you please join us in this? I'm a parent of high school athletes, okay, and have been for a little while. I know how it goes. I know what the conversation is like at home sometimes. The kids have a limited perspective on what's going on. They're only teenagers. And so when things start to spiral downward in a way that is opposite of what I'm trying to talk about here, let's as parents, let's as adults put a stop to that. Let's not throw fuel on that fire, but let's help our kids rise above those natural inclinations that come about in basketball and volleyball and football seasons. And let's work together in the discipleship of our kids and in the creation of this kind of positive culture that we're talking about. And obviously, if there's anything that you ever want to talk to me or any of the other coaches about regarding these things, be more than happy to do it. Be in touch. Let's talk about roles-based basketball. This is going to be a very, very important aspect of what our program is about, and it's going to be a key to us being successful. Bottom line, long story short, we need each guy to accurately understand the role that they have to play in our program, on our team, and we need them to be disciplined to stick to their role. Different players are going to have different roles. Some players are going to have multiple roles. Some players are going to have fewer roles. In order to understand a little bit more about my take on all this, I got to tell you a little bit about my background, which some of you who've been around have heard this, but you'll hear it again. So I went to Cedar Falls High School, and I never really got any serious varsity minutes. And the reason that I never got any serious varsity minutes is because I wasn't good enough. There were guys who were better than me, who worked harder than me, who were more talented than me, who translated their work into effectiveness on the court better than me. And so all the way till halfway through my senior year, when I broke my foot, my basketball career was over in high school. I was a JV starter, and I was a JV player my junior year, and I was a B team guy in 9th grade and 8th grade. I was a practice player against our varsity starters, and I was a bench mob guy. And those were my roles. I needed to be an encourager on the bench. I needed to be a tough opponent for our starting post players in practice. I needed to bring a good attitude and energy and coachability, even though I wasn't going to see many varsity minutes. Ironically, my coaches started to notice that the game of basketball was finally coming together for me mentally, and my coordination was coming together about halfway through my senior year. They pulled me aside after practice one day before a JV game against West High. They said, "Hey, we're going to show up and watch you play. Show us what you got tonight because we think that you're going to start to get some varsity minutes." I broke my foot in that very game, and it was all over. And looking back on my basketball career in high school with fond memories and many great life lessons, knowing what I know now, which is that I would never rise to the level of getting legitimate varsity minutes. When I say legitimate, what I mean is I'd get in for the last minute and a half or the last 48 seconds or whatever it was. If we were up by a lot or down by a lot, I think I might have scored 2 or 4 points in varsity basketball my entire career. Not really legitimate minutes, kind of scrub time. That was me. But if I knew then what I know now, which is that it was never going to pan out for me the way that I had hoped, I would still have done basketball in a heartbeat. I have so many great memories. I learned so many great things. I enjoyed being on the team. I enjoyed the practices. I enjoyed the locker room, the bus rides, and all the great things that the guys in our program get to experience, whether they get varsity playing minutes or not. And so when I think about roles and when I think about kids who aren't getting to play the role that they wish they were, kind of like I didn't ever get to play the role that I wish I did. I never got to start a varsity game. There's a funny story about one time when I almost did, but I didn't. When I think about how much basketball served me and how much I benefited from it, despite the fact that it never panned out with me getting the role that I wanted, I sure want to encourage guys who aren't starting or getting varsity minutes to still lean into this and still figure out what their role is and play it to the best of their ability. We need, and this really gets to it. This really can get to not only a culture. Not only do we need a culture, not only do we need our basketball team's entire culture to be roles based, but we need guys' individual character to be strong enough that they can accept the role that they have. Just had a great conversation with one of our players during open gym a couple weeks ago, and we were doing a transition drill, and I was pointing out to the 5 guys that were in the drill at that moment that when we get the rebound and we transition from defense to offense, we're going to want to get the ball in the hands of a ball handler. And so among these 5 guys that are on the floor right now, it's probably not this guy and it's probably not this guy. 2 guys who are on the floor who were not the best ball handlers given the 5 who were on the floor. There's 3 other guys who are better ball handlers, and we should get the ball to one of them. I had a good conversation with one of those 2 guys who wasn't a ball handler. And he was kind of pushing back a little bit on me in a respectful way. and said, basketball these days is kind of a positionless sport. And so you're going to be in a situation, every player is going to be in a situation where they're going to have to handle the ball at some point. And I agree that that's true. But in a situation that we're in transition, when you have an option of 3 guys who handle the ball better than 2 guys who don't, we for sure want to get it to a ball handler. I was trying to help this kid understand that you got to know your role and you need to accept your role. Yes, if somebody gets trapped in a corner and you're the only one who's around and you're not one of our best ball handlers, but you're a better option than turning the ball over and they throw the ball to you, you're going to have to handle the ball. But we want the ball in the hands of our ball handlers primarily. And that's not to insult or throw shade on guys who don't handle the ball well. It's just to say, to set ourselves up well, we got to know what each one of our roles is, and we need to have the people with certain roles do those roles, and the people who don't have certain roles don't do those roles. That goes for shooting. There's certain shots that certain guys shouldn't take. There's that goes for defending. That goes for rebounding. That goes for guys who aren't even going to get in the game. We need guys on the bench who are encouraging. We need guys in practice who are practicing hard against the guys who are going to get the playing time so that they're better, they're more ready for games. Every role matters. Every role counts. Every role is essential to the team, but not every role is going to be the role that every guy dreams of playing. And we need to have the toughness. We need to have the security and the strength of character to know what is my role and what is not my role, and the discipline to stick to the things that are my role, and the discipline to avoid the things that are not my role. This really gets down to a confidence that is rooted in who I am in Christ. If I am confident in who I am in Christ, then I don't need to draw confidence from playing a role that I wish I could play, but I can't. You want to talk about a bad ball handler? I mean, right here. I mean, one of the worst ball handlers of all time. In fact, I still have nightmares or dreams that I'm in high school and I've got a breakaway opportunity to go make a layup in transition, and I just can't quite keep hold of the ball, and I dribble it off my knee or my foot, or I lose control of it, and I never finish the bucket. This is literally a dream that I still have in my 40s. I don't need to be the guy handling the ball. I don't need to be the guy shooting a three-pointer. I don't need to be the guy worrying about, am I going to start on Friday? Or am I going to get in the game on Friday? Because I'm probably not going to. And so I better make the most of the practice time that I have to get Thad ready to play. Or I better make the most of the JV game that I have to, that's kind of my moment to do whatever I'm going to do and play the role that I'm going to play there. So know your role and stick to your role. This is a life skill. This is a life skill that will benefit people who are willing to accept and play their role in every area of their lives, not constantly try to get into a role or kind of, shoehorn their way into something that they're not meant for, they're not made for. So we're gonna have a lot of conversations about roles. I'll just say this last thing. We had a group of players that came over to our house from time to time this summer. Not everyone was able to make it, but one of the nights I passed out note cards and I asked guys to write down what they think their role on this team might be. And I told them it was going to be private. No one's going to see this except me. I'm not going to show the other players. But I want you to, in the best way that you can, articulate what you think might be your role and maybe even what you think might not be your role. And I'll just tell you that I was encouraged for the people that were there reading through those cards. I would say with about 85, 90% accuracy, the guys who participated in that activity had a pretty good grasp of what I and what we coaches perceive their roles to be. Now, obviously, as players improve, as they grow, as they develop, their roles can change. Nothing is etched in stone there. But I was encouraged to see guys who had a realistic grasp of what their roles were. And that's going to be a key to our success on the court. It's going to be a key to you young men developing an understanding of how to approach a bunch of different things that you're going to do throughout your lives, which are dependent on you knowing your role and sticking to it. I want to say a few things about our playing time philosophy. Let's just start with the fact that this year we're going to have two teams. We're going to have a varsity team and a JV team. I would guess that our varsity rotation will be in the 7 or 8 person range. We're going to be running a lot, more than we have in the past. And so we're not going to be able to get by with playing 5 or 6 guys like we have sometimes in the past. And we have guys that can stretch our rotation out to 7 or 8 who we feel comfortable with. So there's that. Last year was the first year and the only year that we've ever tried a third team, a JJV team. We had so many kids out, over 30 kids out. And this year we won't be doing that because we have quite a few fewer than that out. So like I said, 7 or 8 guys in the varsity rotation. I think we'll have 12-ish people who get varsity jerseys. And beyond that will be the JV team. Kyle Nelson is our head JV coach, and he's going to be kind of running that. And we'll be in conversation with him, the rest of us coaches, about what that looks like. I would imagine that, for example, our 6th and 7th guys on varsity might get a quarter or 2 of JV time. One big change last year, which we're continuing with this year, is that our JV program exists to prepare kids to play varsity basketball. And so in the past, in the first couple years when I was coaching, and before that, JV was a place where the kids who didn't play varsity were guaranteed playing time. And that was nice. We wish that everyone could play, but it's not realistic as our program grows, as our school grows, and it doesn't serve the value of competitiveness that we want to achieve, the level of excellence and success that we want to achieve. So we aren't guaranteeing every JV kid playing time. And if there's no way that a JV kid is going to likely contribute someday in varsity, they're probably going to have limited time. And of course, that is said with the understanding that over the years, kids grow and develop. My son Mason, for example, was a pipsqueak even till his junior year. Small, scrawny little kid, and then he shot up. And so, I mean, kids get better and kids develop. And so it's a little bit of a judgment call. We don't want to be too harsh and calloused about it, but that's just kind of an overview of our philosophy regarding JV and its purpose to serve varsity level, to develop varsity level players down the road. I would just say this generally about playing time. There are kids who put a lot of time in. They work hard, and they are in the gym maybe more faithfully. They're getting more shots up, more than other kids who might play ahead of them. And so I just need to say that working hard isn't the only thing that contributes to getting playing time. Being good at basketball isn't the only thing that contributes to playing time. We want kids with good attitudes, who are team players, who are helping uphold the cultural values that I talked about earlier of oneness and buy-in, of team unity, of encouraging one another, of being for each other. Another thing about playing time that I would say is that I'm not going to be the type of coach who locks myself into if this, then this rules. One of the classic examples that is common in high school is if a kid gets a technical foul, he's out for the rest of the game. Or if a kid gets a technical foul, he's out for the rest of the game and he doesn't start the next game. I think those rules are generally well intended and I think they're generally effective, but I think that there are circumstances that happen that I wouldn't want to hedge myself in by creating a rule like that. We had a classic example, Mason's senior year when we were playing Don Bosco, and Mason went up for a layup, and Ty Purdy, Mason thought Ty fouled him. The shot went in, and Ty and Mason knew each other from basketball over the years. They knew each other from outside of basketball. They had kind of a playful relationship, and on the way back down the court, Mason was going like this, like, Ty, you fouled me, you fouled me. And they were kind of laughing. And the ref thought that Mason was, I think the ref thought Mason was flipping him off. And that's not what was happening. The ref teed him up. I didn't see what happened. So I immediately substituted Mason out. I found out what the real story was at the next timeout. I went in, talked to the referee, explained the situation, and put Mason back in the game. Now, if I had a rule that said if a kid gets a technical, he's out for the rest of the game, then Mason would have been out for the rest of the game, and probably unfairly so, and it would have hurt our chances to win that game. So we're not going to have hard and fast if-then rules. Another thing I would say is that if you see any sort of antic from a player, and if you think on your observation from a distance from the stands at the surface level that we didn't address whatever the antic was or whatever the situation was properly, I guess I would ask you to understand that there are things going on beyond what you see, and we are dealing with those things. Obviously, if you see a playing time issue at the JV level, at the varsity level, that you think needs to be addressed, I mean, that's what we're here for, is to have people come talk to us. We don't want to talk about that immediately before or immediately after a game. We want to talk to parents and kids together, because a lot of times, I mean, no disrespect to these kids, but a lot of times the story that mom and dad get at home isn't the full story. And so we're able to pull the kid and the parent into a meeting with a couple coaches and talk through what we're seeing at practice, talk through why we're making the decisions regarding playing time that we're making. And a lot of times we can come to a better understanding what's going on. But we certainly are not beyond being asked those questions as coaches and having those conversations. There's another larger issue related to playing time that I'm going to address in another video about beating the computer and the influence of BC Moore, and why lots of times it might seem like our starters are in longer than some people think they should be based on the score of the game or how far we're ahead of or behind an opponent. And we'll get into the weeds on that question in a different video. But I think that's generally all I've got on playing time for right now. If I think something else, I'll throw it on here. I thought of one more playing time thing after I hit stop regarding JV. While we will not have a third team, we will not have a JJV team. I have talked to Coach Joe, our athletic director, and our assistant boys basketball coach about scheduling or putting feelers out to schedule some games against 9th grade teams or 9th and 10th grade teams that would function like JJV games. And so that would give, if we get any of those games scheduled, that would give an opportunity for our lower JV kids who might not get a ton of time in JV games to get some time in a JJV game against a 9th or 10th grade team from a different school. So stay tuned on that. So this is going to be the video where I hope to answer or start to partially answer the question, why are our starters or why are our better players staying in the game longer than it seems like they need to? I hear this once in a while from parents or from fans or even from other players. It seems like the game is in hand. It seems like it's been decided already, whether we're winning by 20 or whether we're losing by 20, and we're in the fourth quarter. It seems like it's decided, and so can't we get our bench players more time? And a couple of answers to that. Number one is, I addressed this earlier, like we're a competitive varsity basketball team. We're here to win. We're here to have the results be as favorable as possible. Our primary goal isn't getting everybody playing time. And eventually, if you haven't already, you'll hear a story of how it was for me in high school with regard to that, which has helped shape my view of this and how I coach. The other answer to that question has to do with analytics. It has to do with how we are being set up to be seeded in our postseason districts. And I'm going to try to explain this briefer than longer, although I could do probably 30 or 45 minutes like we did with the kids in the locker room last year, so they could understand exactly why we do these type of things. So let me start with the end in mind, and then I'll kind of fill in the gaps, and then I'll tell a story. There are about 140 some 1A basketball teams in the state of Iowa, 140 some, and there are 16 postseason districts. And so those districts, if you do the math, 140 some divided by 16, it ends up being 8 or 9 teams per district. And those 8 or 9 teams are seeded 1 through 8 or 1 through 9, 1 being the top seed, the best seed, 8 or 9 being the worst seed in that district. Just for reference, last year we were a 3 seed. North Lynn was a 1 seed. Don Bosco, who we beat in the second round at their gym, was a 2 seed. In previous years, we've been a 5 seed or a 4 seed. And all this stuff has bearing on how the postseason is going to play out. And all of this is affected by how we perform against the computer. It's not enough to just win a game. We need to beat the computer. That's the language we talk about with the guys. And what I mean is there's a analytics website called BC More, BC, the 2 letters, and then MOORE. You could Google BC More Iowa. It'll take you there. You can study this stuff, and it's a rabbit hole that you can go way down for a long time. A lot of interesting stuff. Don't fully know what to think of it. Back in the day, a couple of 3 years ago, we used to not talk about it with the players because we didn't want to psych them out. We didn't want to point them to it. Fact is, they all know about it. They're looking at it anyway. So we need to process this with them in a way that is advantageous to our team, in a way that helps us, mentally, rather than incapacitates us mentally. So these postseason districts, 16 of them in 1A, are seeded 1 through 8. Historically, those seeds, how they were ordered, 1 through 8 or 1 through 9, were determined by the coaches of the 1 of the 8 or 9 teams in each district. They would get together and then they would vote on the seeds. Well, the problem is that became a little bit political. There's a story about Riceville a few years ago getting totally hosed on their seed because the other coaches in their district kind of made an alliance. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And even though Riceville should have been a higher seed, they were kind of given a lower seed because politically it didn't shake out for them. Well, that's happened over and over and over in different districts throughout the state over the years. And so the State Athletic Association decided to step in, and now they vote on seeding in Des Moines. They have a group of people that does that. That's their job, so it doesn't get political. And because they are a group of people in Des Moines, not a group of people who have seen these teams play, particularly 1A basketball in Northeast Iowa, they haven't seen us play. They haven't seen our opponents play. Maybe they've heard of some of the better teams or the bigger teams, but by and large, more and more, they're relying on analytics or rankings from outside sources. Of course, they look at statistics and they try to do the best due diligence that they can. And I'm sure that if someone from Des Moines heard this video, they'd say, no, we don't rely on analytics. Well, some say they don't, but we've also heard anecdotal evidence that they rely more and more on these analytics, which puts more and more pressure on us to beat the computer, so that our analytics look better, so that when they vote, we have a better chance of getting a better seed. Now, I kind of drew this up for you. This is a district bracket, a sample district bracket. And I don't want to insult anyone here, but maybe not everybody knows how these things work. The way that any tournament bracket is set up in sports, it's set up so that the better teams the higher seeds, the 1 seed or the 2 seed, have the easiest path possible throughout the tournament. That's their reward for being a better team. And so here you got a 1 seed is going to be lined up against the winner. If this is a 9-team district, they're going to be lined up against the winner of an 8-9 play-in game. Then you've got the 2 seed down here, and they're going to be against the 7 seed. And that 2 seed is given a spot opposite the 1 seed because they get the second easiest path to success in the bracket. They're not going to have to run into a team that's better than them, the 1 seed, until way down here in the bracket. You've got the 4 seed and the 5 seed up here, so that the winner of that game will be the 4 seed or the 5 seed. There's no chance, again, we're protecting the 1 seed to have the easiest path forward. There's no chance that the 1 seed will have to play a decent 2 seed team or a decent 3 seed team. The best team they're going to play is the 4th best team in the bracket, and thus protecting them from a difficult game earlier in the tournament. So last year we were the 3 seed and we played a 6 seed, North Butler. And the way it works is that the higher seed gets to host the lower seed in their home gym. And so it's really important. We really don't want to be a 5 seed or a 6 seed or a 7 seed or an 8 or 9 seed, because that means our very first game is going to be on the road. And we'd rather not be a 4 seed even, because that means our second game is against the 1 seed. Last year, the 1 seed was North Lynn, and they smoked us, and we were the 3 seed. And so we certainly don't want to play them as a 4 seed or a 5 seed. Don Bosco was the 2 seed last year. So we won our game against North Butler at home. We advanced to that spot. Don Bosco won their game at home against whoever. But because they were the 2 seed and we were the 3 seed, they were the higher seed, we had to go play at Don Bosco now. Fortunately, we avenged our 2 losses earlier in the season, and we advanced. The 3 seed upset the 2 seed in their home gym. We advanced to right here. Here came North Lynn storming down the bracket. We meet North Lynn. We get absolutely destroyed, and that's the end of our season. The reason I point all this stuff out is because if you want to rewind and study that bracket better, listen to what I said again. If this is all new information for you, it's really, really key for us to be a 3 seed instead of a 4 seed. It's even better if we could have been a 2 seed instead of a 3 seed. We didn't get that accomplished last year. If we had, we'd have guaranteed our first 2 tournament games to be at home, which is very good. But all this is being determined by people in Des Moines who are voting on seeding, and they're basing their votes on what the analytics say. And so let's say there's 16 1 seeds. Remember, there's 16 districts, 16 1 seeds in the state of Iowa in 1A, 16 2 seeds, 16 3 seeds, 16 4 seeds. Okay, so do the math on this. It's not perfect like this, but hypothetically or theoretically, the 16 best teams in the state should be 1 seeds in their districts. Teams that are ranked 17th through 32nd should be 2 seeds in 16 different districts. Teams that are ranked 33 through 48 should be 3 seeds in 16 different districts. Teams that are ranked 49 through 64 should be, I'm trying to do the math quick, in 16 different districts. So the reason I'm spelling that out for you is because whether we are the 49th best team in the state or the 42nd best team in the state or the 32nd best team in the state, it really matters, and it really affects how we're going to play our postseason out. Now, when I say it really matters, obviously, if you've listened to my previous videos about our values and about our theme, I mean, basketball in the grand scheme of things doesn't matter that much at all. But if we're going to take what happens on the court seriously, this is something we're going to take seriously. So here's an example from 2 years ago about how this plays out. The BC Moore analytics tell us we had a home game against Meskwaki. Meskwaki was down bad that year, and we had a decent team. Told us before the game that all these numbers get dumped in game after game. It like updates every day, and the numbers change every day. The rankings change every day. We were told that according to the analytics, we're supposed to win that game against Meskwaki in our gym by 72 points. When I see that, I just kind of swallow hard and I go, that cannot happen. As a coach, I feel like I don't want that to happen. I can't let that happen. Because who wants to go out there, especially a Christian school, and just dominate these kids into oblivion? Win by 72 points? Are you kidding me? And so I kind of went into that game thinking, well, we're going to talk to the guys about being really classy, about playing with lots of sportsmanship. We want to give our best effort. We want to work hard. We want to play well and let the chips fall. But we certainly need to be sensitive to the fact that these guys are expecting to come in and get their butts kicked. And we might kick their butts, but we want to do it in as nice of a way as possible. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, and we need to beat the computer. We need to win this game by 72 points. Now, I didn't set out to win that game by 72 points. And this is an extreme example. But as the game started out and as we started playing, it was obvious that this team from a skill level is quite a bit inferior to us. It doesn't mean that they're not good guys. That doesn't mean that we don't want the best for them throughout their life. It just means that they're not good basketball players. And we were quite a bit better. And lo and behold, by the end of the game, I'd have to look it up, but I think we won by 74 points. And I think we had our starters out for the second half of the second quarter, and I think we had them out for pretty much the whole fourth quarter, if not longer. And so people would say, well, gosh, by the time you were in the third quarter, you must have been up 40 or 50 points. Why did you even have starters in then? Well, because part of the mentality that we have been conditioned to consider because of how the state does postseason seeding is that we don't just need to win the game against Meskwaki. We need to beat the computer. And the computer says we're supposed to win by 72 points. And if we win, but we only win by 50 points, that actually docks us in the analytics. You could actually lose spots in your ranking for beating a team by 50 points that you were supposed to beat by 72. Likewise, you could gain spots in your ranking if you lose to a team by 15 points that you were supposed to lose to by 25. And so the reason for telling you all this is because when you're sitting in the bleachers or when you're sitting on the end of the bench and you're wondering, why am I not in the game? Or why is my kid not in the game? Or why is coach still have his starters on the floor and you're up 25 points? Shouldn't we be getting some of the subs in? The fact is that how we perform against the computer is going to affect our postseason seed. And our postseason seed is going to determine whether we have home games, the difference between a 5 seed and a 4 seed. Whether we have 2 home games, the difference between a 3 seed and a 2 seed. It's going to determine how soon we play the best teams in our bracket. How soon in the tournament are we going to play the 1 seed? Last year, we held that game off for 2 games, and then we ran into the buzzsaw, and the season was over. That's the way it goes. But we're trying to set ourselves up for the longest and the best success, not just in that particular game, but in the postseason, which requires us to consider the analytics, requires us to think about or to be committed to beating the computer so that we're in the best, highest ranking possible, getting the best seed in the postseason possible. Hopefully some of that helps you understand. You might not like it. I don't really like it. I think the state should do something so that, put a limit on how the analytics can be affected by a win. Maybe if you win by at least 40 points, then it doesn't matter if you won by 40 or by 80. It's a massive decision that we're not penalized by because we didn't beat the computer. There you go. BC Moore, analytics, postseason seeds. Hope you're enlightened. I want to talk about another aspect of what we're going to do on the court, and that is that we're going to do fewer, simple things well. We're not going to do more complex things unwell. And what's behind this is the notion or the tendency that sometimes we want to make the game of basketball a lot more complex than it needs to be. And if we were the University of Iowa, and if we had 13 guys on our team who had excelled at the very highest levels in high school, and they had made a Division I Big Ten basketball team, and they had a very high basketball IQ. They eat, sleep, and breathe basketball every day. Then we would do more complex things. If we were a larger school, with a larger high school, with a broader range of talent, we had more kids who, again, eat, sleep, and breathe basketball, who have a very high basketball IQ and who can play at a very high level, and they can do complex things well, then we would do that. But that's not the hand that we're dealt in 1A Iowa Star Conference basketball. And I don't mean to insult anybody. Frankly, I don't think I'd do very well in a program that tried to do a lot of complex things well. That takes a certain kind of coach that's at another level than I'm at. So we're going to do fewer things that are simple. And by focusing on fewer things that are simple, we're going to be able to do them very well with the personnel that we have. Just to illustrate to you again, the personnel issue that we have. We might have had 7 or 9 set plays the last couple years. I'm thinking of one of them called Celtics. If at any given moment in a game or during a timeout we called out Celtics, I wasn't sure that we even had 5 guys on the floor that would immediately get in the right position and run that play, the timing of it and everything accurately. And if we can't run Celtics right, if we can't run square right, if we can't run Tigers right, and 3 or 4 other set plays right every single time like clockwork, then it's foolish to think that we're going to be more complex, that if we play in a more complex or do more of that complex stuff, that we're going to thrive. So more simple things. Well, that's not to say that we're not going to have set plays. That's not to say that we're not going to, try to do some things that might seem complex to people who maybe are new to basketball or new to some of the things we're going to do, but we're going to try to focus on being simple. And in one of my other videos, I talked about how we're going to focus first on defense, and then we're going to focus on rebounding, and then transition, and then offense. And there'll be some other components, but that's a pretty simple breakdown of what we're going to do. And in each one of those areas, we're going to drill down deep to really hone and perfect the few things that we need to do well within those areas to succeed, rather than trying to create a bunch of different wrinkles. And on defense, we're going to mostly run man-to-man. We might throw a zone or 2 in there, but we're not going to spend a lot of time, trying to get real tricky or real sophisticated. On offense, we're going to mostly run a 5-out offense, maybe a 4-out, 1-in offense. We're going to prioritize certain shots. You've heard me talk about this. Nothing's going to be too complex. Nothing's going to be rocket science. Yes, we'll have some set plays. We'll have some out-of-bounds plays under the basket or on the sideline. We'll run a certain kind of press. We'll run a certain kind of press break and be ready to run that against different looks. But when I listen to my son Mason, who is a basketball manager for the men's team down at Iowa, or when I listen to my friend Ryan Schultz, who's the head coach at Cedar Falls High School, they're doing things in both cases at a very complex level that, frankly, our guys, and maybe even myself, aren't equipped to handle. And the good news is this: we don't have to be able to do those complex things well, because if we do simple things well, we can still win. And that's what we're going to do, because we've got the best chance of bringing along 5 or 7 or 8 or 9 guys who can grasp all of the things that we're going to do and who can pull them off at a moment's notice when a game situation requires it. So fewer simple things well. That'll be good. One other thing I want to mention about fewer simple things well. I think this also serves our entire basketball program going all the way down to the junior high and elementary levels. We don't need these kids at those levels learning all this stuff about different offensive schemes or different defensive looks. We just need to learn those kids to, we just need those kids to learn to pass and catch and dribble and make layups and make free throws, and learn some very basic concepts about the defense we're running at the varsity level, the offense that we're running, and so that they're equipped and they're able to just kind of progress through the grades as they grow up toward varsity basketball. So doing fewer simple things well will serve our lower level programs effectively as well. Hey, right now I want to go through a priority list of how we're going to think about the way we play on the floor, how we approach the game of basketball. This isn't necessarily a culture thing. This isn't a character thing. But here's a priority list that I just want to go through quickly. And I've got something on the backside to show you. Our number one priority is going to be defense. And then our number two priority is after we've defended, this all kind of goes in order. After we've defended well, we assume that most times a shot is going to go up if we didn't get a steal or a turnover. And when that shot goes up, we have got to get rebounds. We've got to get rebounds. We've got to box out. We've got to do a better job than rebounding than we ever have. The number of games that I've seen where I notice that rebounding would have won the game, but it was lost because somebody didn't get a rebound. You allowed the other team to get an offensive rebound, get another opportunity. I've seen it in our games. I saw it in the WNBA season this past year. I saw it during March Madness. It happens all the time. Teams lose games because they don't value rebounds. We're going to highlight rebounds. And then when we get the ball, we're going to transition. We want to run. We've got a team this year that's going to be able to run well. We've been working on that. We're going to continue to work on that. And then if the transition bucket isn't there, if we can't score right away out of transition, then we're going to focus on our offense. And offense is last on the list on purpose. Obviously, you can't win a basketball game without scoring points, and scoring points is dependent on offense. But if we prioritize offense, which I think is the default priority in most basketball players' minds, particularly high school boys basketball. You come into the gym, the first thing you do is grab a ball and start hucking up shots. And I'm not saying, obviously, that we're against offense. It's just we want to think about this game in this order. We want to play really tough defense. We want to get a ball, turnover. If that doesn't happen, we want to give the rebound after the only shot they take of the possession. We don't want to give them a second chance. Then we want to run, and we want to score in transition, easy layup buckets, preferably. And if that's not there, then we set up our offense and run our offense. Now, here's how I think most kids think about it. The reason this priority list is the way it is, here's the priority list I just went through on the other side: defense, rebounding, transition, offense. I think kids are thinking offense, 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 offense. And we're trying to reprogram that thought process. We got to value things besides offense. It's not popular, pardon the term here. It's not sexy, but it is how we're going to win games, by prioritizing things besides just offense. And when we have to run offense, we're going to run it well, and we're going to run it effectively. And we've got a whole process of thinking when it relates to offense. But that's kind of our priorities in terms of how we think about the game of basketball generally. Every March, I have the chance to meet up with 5 or 6 of my college buddies in Las Vegas during the first weekend of March Madness. We go out there every year. I've been doing it for 10 or 12 years. Great time to reconnect with these guys. We're all a bunch of Christian conservative guys, so it's not like we're doing any of the crazy Vegas stuff, but we get a nice couple hotel rooms and we go to sports books and watch basketball for 2 or 3 days together, hang out, ton of fun. And I had an epiphany, or kind of a confirmation, an affirmation of something I've been thinking for a long time just last year during the tournament. I don't know if you remember this, if you watched March Madness, but in the first round, there was a team called Oakland, and they had a coach named Greg Campy. And they had a player named Jack, forget his name, started with a G. But anyway, Oakland got matched up against Kentucky. Kentucky's one of the blue bloods, Calipari's team, one of the best programs historically in the country. Nobody gave Oakland a chance. Oakland pretty much led the game from wire to wire. Jack Golke, that's the kid's name. And they ended up beating Kentucky. It was a great story. And I watched several of the post-game interviews with Greg Campy and Jack Golke. And Greg Campy said something interesting. If you watch that game, Jack Golke made 10 3-pointers in that game, I believe. I think he made 7 threes in the first half and 3 in the second half. Obviously, he missed a few, and obviously the rest of the team did their part. But in one of the post-game press conferences, he just kind of off the cuff said, it's interesting that we won the way that we did, because the priority that we have for our shooting, we value certain shots more than other shots. And this is what he said, the order of priority they have. They first value layups. I agree. And they second place, the second priority, they value free throws. And then finally, in third place, they value 3-pointers. Now, we've talked about this with our guys in the past. I've gotten some pushback. But after I heard Coach Campy, who's been at Oakland for 40 years, say this, which is the hunch that I kind of have had, I'm doubling down, I'm tripling down on that. Layups, free throws, 3-pointers. Now, in the past, when we've talked about that, I've got to take some of the responsibility for this because maybe we didn't communicate it clearly. In the past, when we've talked about this, everyone has assumed that we hate 3-pointers. We don't want to shoot 3-pointers. Well, that's ridiculous. That was ridiculous for Campy and Golke in that game where they beat Kentucky. He hit 10 threes. That's a crazy number of threes to hit in a game. And so obviously they're not against threes. It's just that they prefer layups and free throws more. They prioritize layups and free throws more than threes. And one thing that you hear him say, I'm going to try to find the clip and maybe play it at the end of this. He also talks about they don't really like to shoot twos. What he means is non-layup 2-pointers, mid-range shots. And there's a whole debate that goes around that. Some would say you have to have a mid-range game because it makes the defense come out and guard your mid-ranges, not only guard the 3 or the layup. I would say, generally speaking, in 1A Iowa Star Conference basketball, defenses aren't sophisticated enough for that to matter. And our mid-range shooters generally aren't high enough percentage shooters to make valuing mid-ranges higher than we do, which is low. Like Greg Campy, he's a college basketball coach, and he says they don't really shoot twos. They shoot layups, free throws, and threes. Couple things. Our 3-pointers, not only are we putting threes in the third position, but we're going to be very, very particular about making sure that the 3-point shots that we take, and by the way, we've got some 3-point shooters on our team, okay? So this is going to be a good year for that. But we want to take open, set 3-point shots. If there's another guy in the corner who's more open than you and you're both 3-point shooters, I want to go the extra pass. I want to get it to the guy who's got a more open shot. I want set shots. We don't need step back threes. We don't need floater threes. We don't need guys shooting threes who aren't 3-point shooters. We need 3-point shooters shooting good 3-pointers from a set, open position. And that's going to be our third priority. Now, we're going to have games once in a while where our 3-point shooters go off. That's great. We love it. That's what happened with Jack Golke. That's why they were able to beat Kentucky. Free throws. Let me just say something about free throws. I think I need to look back at our numbers. I know I'm probably being a little bit too ambitious here, but I honestly think that if you are a starting basketball player in high school, you ought to be able to hit 70% of your free throws. I think I'm not naive enough or stupid enough to think that we should expect 90%. I think that a guy could shoot 90% free throws if they really put their work into it. 80% is pretty high. I think 70% is a reasonable number. And especially our guys who are going to be going to the foul line. So that's a mark to shoot for. And then layups. Man, layups. We just got to make layups. And we got to run our offense so that we get open layups. A lot of cuts, a lot of in and out, a lot of movement without the ball. And we love layups. We love layups in transition. We love layups out of our offense. And if you run the math on this, going back to the 3-pointers, even our best 3-point shooters, our very best 3-point shooters aren't going to probably shoot more than 35% from 3. And so that means that 65% of the time that we shoot a three, even when it's our best three-point shooters, 65% of the time, it's going to be a miss. And offensive rebounds are tough to come by. So let's say, less than half of those misses are going to be rebounded by the offense. Maybe less than a third or less than a quarter of those misses are going to be rebounded by the offense. And so those missed three-point shots, they function kind of like a turnover. And we do want good three-point shooters shooting open three-point shots. But if there's a better shot, a layup, which should be a really high conversion rate, 70, 80% from layup, we'd rather take that. And we love getting to the line. They're called free throws. They're free. So that's just a little bit about our shooting. And the guys have heard this. They're going to continue to hear this. Wanted to loop everyone in on that. And thanks for listening. Hey, so I could go on, and there are several things that I didn't get into in this video, but I gave you a little bit of an overview of some of the more important or kind of high level, scratch the surface type things. So thanks for checking this out. I just want to make one last appeal to parents in closing, and that is this, that please do your very best to represent our school and Christ, as well as yourselves, well in the stands. Believe me, there have been seasons of my life where there was no one who had more fun screaming at referees or taunting opponents than me. I'm not that way anymore. I've been sanctified. Remember, we talked about that sanctification process that takes as we hope these kids pursue Christ-like character. It is my job as the head coach. My favorite thing about being head coach is I get to stand during the games. I'd have a hard time just sitting the entire time. And so only one coach, the head coach, can stand and kind of roam the sidelines. And one of my jobs is to remind the referees to not forget to call certain things so that it benefits our players, just like they're calling those things more than they should to benefit the other team. I try to do that with respect. If you watch me from a distance, I coach with a lot of passion. I yell a lot, but I can safely say that we have a very good reputation with the referees in our conference. We're not perfect. There have been times when the refs have had to get after us. I've never personally received a technical. One of my goals in coaching is to never receive a technical foul. I have had a couple administrative technical fouls given to me because I didn't get the lineup in time before the game. We've had an assistant coach get a technical foul or two. That's not what we want. I also can safely say I think we have a great reputation with the other coaches in our league. Again, we compete against them. We want to win. In some cases, we compete fiercely against them. But before games, after games, in the off season, during the season, when we run into each other, messages on social media, text messages, etc., I think we have a great reputation and a great relationship with every coach in our conference. And that's really a high priority for me, should be a high priority for our school, that we are respected, not because we care about being respected, but because as representatives of Christ, we want people to think highly of Christ. And so we want them to respect us. We want them to think that we are, decent image bearers of him. And sometimes when I'm sitting on the bench and I'm observing our crowd, I kind of cringe because maybe we're going a little bit overboard in the way that we, in particular, badger the referees. I have got a good friend who is a referee. He's on the board of directors. He's the director of our board at Christian Crusaders. And he said it would be helpful for referee staffs if fans and coaches just understood going into a game, there are going to be 2 or 3 calls that are bad calls that go against you. And there's probably going to be 2 or 3 calls that are bad calls at minimum that go against them. And that's just part of the deal. It's increasingly difficult to get referees, particularly for basketball. Basketball is especially dicey, unattractive for referees because the fans and the coaches are right on top of them all the time. In football, you've got quite a bit of distance between the stands and the refs, the game in most cases. Volleyball can get a little dicey, but basketball's bad. And if we don't have referees, we don't play games. And so I really, while I'm going to be adamant about pointing out to the refs when I think they miss something, I'm going to do it respectfully. I'm going to do it in a way that I think honors Christ, that represents myself and our school well. And it's just, we need our parents and our fans in the stands to be the same way. I think we ought to be the place. We ought to be the fans in front of whom every ref would rather ref than any other place. And that's not to say that we can't be unhappy about a bad call or to even voice that in a certain way as fans, maybe. But I would say let's just be cognizant of the big picture in the way that we cheer. Here's one other thing I want to say to parents. And this is just a personal pet peeve of mine. And it's something I observe from time to time, sitting on the bench, watching our fans from across the floor. And you might think that I'm so into the game that I never notice any of this stuff, but I do. One thing that drives me nuts is when parents only or especially cheer for just their kid. When I'm sitting in the stands, this is just me, and I'm not the perfect example of everything, but my kids are on the floor and they do something great. I try to consciously subdue my response to that. Yeah, of course I'm excited that Jillian served an ace or got a great kill, or Mason made a big bucket or got a steal, or Jillian or Gentry or Judah did something. Of course I'm very excited. They're my kids. I love to see them succeed. I know every parent is that way. But I try to kind of ratchet it down a degree or two when it's my kid that does something well. And I try to ratchet it up a degree or two when it's somebody else's kid. I think it's a really bad look as parents to their own kids, as parents to other parents, as parents to other kids, when we are only or especially cheering just for our kid. Maybe it's not fair for me to say that, but I've seen it over the years, and I think it does a lot for our culture if everyone believes that every parent is for every kid, not just their own, because that's what we're trying to accomplish with the kids on the team, that they're for every other kid on the team. And so parents could help lead the way in that. All right. Thanks for watching all this. Maybe you didn't watch all this, but thanks for watching what you did. And we'll see you out on the court.